Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by someone who's challenging the way businesses think about hiring at its very core. This individual has spent years watching companies make critical hiring decisions based on instinct, spreadsheets, guesswork, and decided that the industry needed a better way. With an incredible background in talent acquisition, he's taken all of his learns and the opportunities he's had over his career and building something around workforce planning in a predictive, data-driven, and aligned to real business outcomes. From helping companies forecast hiring demands before it spikes to identifying attrition risks before resignations happen, his work sits at that intersection of talent acquisition, workforce intelligence, and we can't have any conversation these days without mentioning AI. He's showing that hiring can very much be proactive instead of reactive, no matter the size of the organization. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the CEO of Talent Forecast, Jamie Dillon. So thanks so much for joining, Jamie. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you much for that introduction. I couldn't have written that better myself. So yeah.
I won't lie, I took a little bit from your LinkedIn. It massively helped. Your LinkedIn was very nicely created for me, so it did help with it. But I think the concept of what we're going to go through, I think, going to capture quite a lot of people, especially when this is released, which will be around September, October, August, September, provided my dates are correct in my head. We start getting into end of year planning, and this is where this intersection really comes into it. So I think it's going to be one where if you're a manager or if you're responsible for hiring in any shape or form, please grab your notepad and pen because there's going to be a lot that we can kind of discuss here. Before we get into predictive hiring and what you're working towards, I want to kind of start the conversation with something that's a little bit further forward. And like I said, that when I spoke to you the other day, something that I kind of asked the same question to everyone at the beginning, shall we say, is what do you think the biggest challenge, not necessarily just for talent acquisition managers, but for recruiters in general, what do you think the biggest challenges that we're going to have to overcome 3 years from now?
Yeah, look, great question. So I think the biggest challenge within commerce, within business, within the next 3 years, and within society, in my opinion, is going to be job displacement brought about by automation and artificial intelligence. So our own models tell us that around between 34 to 40% of jobs will go within the next 3 years. And job creation brought about by new technologies is looking between 3 to 5%. So when you start to factor in the displacement with creation, there is a huge void that we would not have experienced in a lifetime. So as recruiters, as people within talent acquisition, HR, business and people leaders, we need to understand that we are entering a changing world, and the dynamic impacts on the workforce are going to be vast and huge. And it becomes clear in a few areas. It's not just about the displacement in figures and numbers. We're talking about an adaptation and almost like a evolution of skills within people's jobs will change as well. I mean, we've seen it very much in our own profession within talent acquisition. I wouldn't hire anyone today that doesn't work with or know some kind of artificial intelligence capability to help in their productivity. Because most people within talent acquisition they will tell you that they're managing a bigger workload, that they've got bigger deliverables, that they're trying to do more with less, and the only way that they're able to do that is through efficiencies driven by the use of AI tools. So I think that's probably going to be some of the biggest challenges ahead of us in the next 2-3 years.
So that part you're saying there about obviously having more roles to do, more tasks to do with less, it's something that I'm hearing, I'm seeing through conversations on the podcast, through people just in the space, there's this big
Yeah.
there's this big gap now, I think, between those that are using AI and now those that are still not, and or using just ChatGPT, for example. And I think the conversation that we'll go through with predictive hiring and skill changing. I mean, we spoke the other day about kind of how different the roles are and how people who were phenomenal and flying 5 years ago are really struggling in this current market. So I'm curious to kind of blend that together and see kind of what does the future kind of look like and what predictive hiring can help with that. But before we get into that part, the phrasing of predictive hiring, right? It's not new. Let's say that, right? Many people talk about it. Be under predictive hiring, be workforce planning. You have these meetings at the beginning of the year and you go, okay, who are you going to hire? What month are you going to hire them? And it's like sometimes guesswork, or it feels like it's guesswork. When you talk about predictive hiring technology, which is obviously what Talent Forecast is, what do you mean?
Yeah, look, it's a very good question, and let me kind of explain that. But first, let me set the context and the scene. You're absolutely right. Predictive hiring, the coined term predictive hiring has been around for a while. Even longer has been around. Headcount, workforce planning, workforce intelligence.
Hmm.
The only difference between now and 5 years ago is that we've got models which forward project what the team and what your workforce is going to look like, how it's going to be shaped, what jobs are needed or aren't needed. Whereas the sort of pivotal difference between that and how I'd say 95% of businesses currently plan and manage their headcount is that historically they look at what's already happened in the business to make headcount planning decisions. And while that gives a good indicator of what they could need, what a business could need in terms of future headcount and workforce planning, it's fundamentally flawed because you're relying on data sets that tell you what kind of you already know. Yeah, I mean, even in some of the most popular systems and high-risk systems today, which I won't name names, but they give you analytics which are useful, but in terms of impactful, they're very limited because it's painting a picture on what's already gone on in your business prior. Whereas predictive hiring capability, it looks at what's going to happen in the future. It looks at how your team is going to be shaped. It looks at what headcount planning decisions you'll need to make based upon historical data points, yes, but obviously there's a lot of data points in the models which also examine skills, labor demand, market force dynamics, your financial performance within your industry, and how you're looking to grow, but goes beyond that and actually looks at automation and how that will impact the workforce, how that impacts the way you go about hiring and the way you go about recruiting people in the future. So it paints you a bit more of a detailed, granular picture of what you need tomorrow, rather than tell you and guess what you need tomorrow based upon what you've learned from yesterday.
So let's call it the current models that most teams are adopting is look at the past, try to guess the future. Whereas what you're suggesting is look at the past as a single data point, but bring forward other elements such as where you want to grow, what your current market is looking like, what your sales is looking like, and then merge that all together to then predict something that's hopefully more accurate.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the surprising things that a lot of people might not be aware of, and this relies in attrition as well, is that as humans, inherently, we have certain behavior traits which are typical, which are predictable. If I'm looking to leave a job, for example, there's 99% of the time, there's 11 reasons which would lead me to leave a job. Yeah. And then when you start looking at these on a big data basis, what we can do is we can spot patterns within that data, and those patterns tell a story, and that story gives us the data that we need to make impactful decisions when it comes to who we hire, what they look like, when we need to hire them. Okay, so what I mean by that is that ultimately, when a business loses a member of staff, let's say they've left of their own accord, there would be factors leading up to that. And then we can look at that on a micro level and a macro level. So on a micro level, we can look at things like, the manager relationship with that employee. We can look at the historical labour turnover within that department, within that company. On a macro level, we can look at the turnover for those skills, in the whole market. So, and it can build us quite a detailed picture and forecast of, why somebody would leave and when they would. And it is surprisingly accurate. So yeah, it's really interesting to see, because obviously if we know someone's going to leave before they do from looking at data, that obviously empowers us and empowers businesses to actually do something about that in advance of time, to obviously put retention strategies in place and keep that employee engaged, hopefully happy, and employed for longer within that business.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's not being reactive, it's being proactive. Either you put the nail on the head and they are actually going to leave, but you've already started something behind the scenes to replace, or as you said there, the first thing ideally is retention, especially if they're a valued member, you don't want to be losing them. Let's try and put what we need to. Obviously, you mentioned at the beginning there is a shift in the skills, and I've seen it in a quite a stark way. So I do a lot of engineering hiring, of early stage companies, and the difference now hiring is so dramatically, like, complete worlds apart what it was 4 or 5 years ago. No one cares about the technology anymore. It used to be like, you have to have worked with Java, you have to have done this, you have to, and now it's just like, ignore all that. If you're using Claude, Cursor, insert whatever, fine. It's communication. It's the biggest thing that most people are asking for. And, product engineering, it's communication, it's stakeholder relations. And these were skills that were nice to have, 4 years ago. And now they are the absolute must-haves. It's like a complete flip. Obviously, that's just from what I'm seeing. What are some of the skills, I guess, outside of maybe the communication or more specific in communication, that you've seen from this, the data that you kind of have access to and the companies you've been working with around predictive hiring? What are you observing the shifts in skills?
Yeah, look, great question, Eden. I think when we try to look at the data and understand what's happening in terms of these skill shift changes, one thing is, first of all, become evident in that when 60% of somebody's job it can be done through automated efforts, that person's job is no longer viable. And that's sector and skills discipline agnostic. That is across the board. Yeah, when you can replicate an employee's role up to 60% of their duties through automation, that employee is no longer viable in their current form, in their job's current form within the business. So that's the first point making. But second, and what you mentioned, and I know we spoke about this briefly previously, is the way technology and automation is changing how a lot of us go about our day-to-day tasks and roles. And I think this is no more apparent than within technical and engineering functions. We've seen a huge sea change in the market. And this is predominantly because the way engineers go about coding and go about their job today is so different to 3 years ago. you know. And I mean, it has impacted the way they work, fundamentally, right down to the deepest level between, you know, most job disciplines out there. And the reason for that is because they can use large language models to basically do all of the coding. So what does this mean for them today compared with say an average engineer 3 years ago? I think the fundamental difference is that there's a different skills need and different skills demands on these engineers today. You mentioned communication. Yes, you have to be more articulate in the way you approach your work, because the way you interact with different stakeholders has changed. The shape and dynamics of traditional agile engineering teams is changing as well. And the skills are changing. You know, if you're an engineer and 90% of your time was just, pumping out code, and now you've got a large language module which can do that for you, what does that mean for your job and the way that you work? It means that you've got to be more solution oriented. You've got to have perhaps a deeper understanding around not just what these lines of code does in terms of the output, but you've got to understand the how that impacts other features, how that impacts the platform at large, what architectural challenges that gives you, and trying to reskill and do more is going to make you more valuable, not less. And I think this is where the huge change is currently happening. Like, it's happening today, right? Engineers that are adapting and are learning how to use the tools, how to use the language models to their effect to make them more productive. What questions, how to interact with these tools, and actually, gaining more skills from an architectural perspective is making these engineers more valuable. However, by and large, the engineers who haven't adapted, they will, unfortunately, and I'm sure people watching this today will not like to hear this, but they will become irrelevant, and they will find it harder and harder.
That's the displacement part you're talking about, right? Because I do think there's a large portion of those software engineers that are not adapting, and as a result won't be needed, right? It sucks, and I feel bad. I do feel really bad. And it's not just engineers; it's a whole host of different types of jobs, because you've gone through your entire career, thinking, and engineering was always one of those careers where it's a dead cert career, always going to need technology, and we still need technology, we just need it in a different way. And it's like there is this kind of blocker where some people want to get into these types of companies, but they can't get into these types of companies without the experience. It's like this never-ending cycle, but I don't think there's going to be enough job anymore to fill the people who are looking. And you see, some people are out of work for 18, 24 months. And you can see it's really crippling opportunities for themselves now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's already happening. I mean, Meta made huge levels of engineering and technical redundancies a few months back.
After investing ridiculous amounts into AI and stupid virtual worlds. But hey, Zuck can be Zuck, I guess. So, do you think, Joe, from your perspective, do you think companies are truly hiring for today's needs, or do you think they're hiring for tomorrow's needs? Or, final point, do you think they're just following trends? And let me put a caveat to that last point. Product engineering, it's been around for forever and a day, but it's all of a sudden just got wind in like mainstream hiring, and now everyone and their nan wants to hire a product engineer. Founding engineer used to be called just a software engineer, but now it's all founding engineers. They're like these little pockets of cranes. Like, no, we need a product engineer. Like, do you? Or are you saying that because James is hiring for one, and you think you need to do that because they're also a similar type of company? Regardless, where do you think most companies fall? Based on today, based on hiring for the future, or hiring because of a trend?
I think it depends on the discipline, right? Because there is certainly some of that that within sort of the trend. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but like I like them when software teams were run by project managers, and then actually there was an evolution, and then people learned product management skills, and those kind of disciplines kind of became more product management. That might have started as an early trend, but obviously there was key value and beneficial gains for structuring and giving those skills for people, particularly in product orientated environments where quicker iterations and software product life cycles meant that they could release quickly and be more adaptable to getting customer feedback and then building on that feedback and developing those products. I know that there are a number of trends, like if we see a certain sort of job title, it's like, okay, that's that's kind of what I want to hire. I've seen a lot of them in the market. I think that sort of sums up what we need, without any kind of real kind of gravitas behind that kind of or clarity behind that decision making. So yeah, there is a little bit of the trends happening. I mean, like if we take AI for example within talent acquisition, that is a trend. But it's not just about looking for recruiters who can use Chat GPT. Yeah. If a recruiter could use Chat GPT 18 months ago, 2 years ago, you'd be like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, you're obviously working with the latest tech. You'd probably be really good. We need to hire you. Today, if you said that, there's nothing innovative about it. It's a tool that everybody uses. And in fact, I would argue it would actually be detrimental if you was in a job interview and you said that. The reason for that is because, how are you utilizing that as a tool? Are you using it to draft job specs quickly? Yes, that will save you time, but then you have to understand the way the models work, or that particular model works, in that it's just pumping out, similar content. Then that's going to have detrimental impact to your employer brands and your recruitment marketing strategy, right? Because you're using the same tool that everybody is. Does that impact your tone of voice and how you impact that job creation message to the market? So today it'll be about how are you using artificial intelligence? How are you using large language models to recruit? Have you done any sort of vibe coding? Which is a phrase which I hear more and more. You've done any vibe coding and just going a bit deeper to actually understand how they're using artificial intelligence, not just to tick a box, but to add real value to the business that they're going into and how they approach hiring and recruitment and finding and acquiring talent.
I think on that point of uniquely looking at talent acquisition, because I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday about this, and she's looking for a job, right? And I won't mention her on this, but if anyone is hiring, she's in Berlin, ping me a message, I'll connect you with you, all good. But she was basically explaining, like, how can I show it? She's working in quite a large organization. Like, I don't have the prowess or the power to come and introduce a brand new system because we're structured. Like, in my opinion, please correct me if I'm wrong on this one, it's not about how are you adding 10x as a talent acquisition into your department. Is, are you experimenting? Are you looking for angles? Are you trying different tools? There's all of the tools available pretty much have free trials. You do not need permission to trial something. Trial it for 2 weeks, test it. If it didn't work, that's an AI experience that you now have. Okay, then use that into the next one and test the validity better for the next tool, so on and so forth. And I think sometimes we get bogged down of going, oh, I'm not building it, N agents. Cool, right? Doesn't matter. Or I'm not using Claude or Vibe Code or whatever. All right, but there's so many ways you can adopt AI without just sitting on ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT is my best friend. I'll be honest with you. It's for everything that I'm doing. Just have conversations, just spar ideas, and then you take those ideas and you see, is there something out there? Something's not out there. Okay, how can we build it? That's the process you need to get through. So on that, I don't think you need to be the vibe coder, but I think you need to push yourself to say, I'm acknowledging that the AI side exists, and I'm not just waiting to be told from my manager, this is a tool you've got, now go use it. I'm being proactive.
Yeah, I think you've actually touched on which I'm sure we probably won't go into time today, but you've actually touched on something that is an issue. There are a huge volume of tools, AI tools out there, and I think what people have got, particularly in sort of people management or recruiting or talent acquisition, I think they've got a little bit of tool fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Because there has been a lot of tools come out onto the market, probably more so within the last 12 months than in the previous 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And that is a lot for people to get their head round. If you're, and again, it's not productive or conducive if you're trialing a tool, your team's trying a tool every other week or every month, right? That can only go on so long before you just like, another.
What it kind of reminds me of, and this is kind of bashing my own part of recruitment here, because obviously I'm an external. It reminds me a little bit about external recruitment, right? Because there always seems to be another external agency popping up. Hey, Jamie, like, this is what I do. Again, I'm taking the piss out of myself here because that's me. But it kind of feels like that. I'm not going to name the searching tools, but they by and large do the same thing that Recruiter does. They look a little bit better. They're a little bit faster. You can do natural language. Great. But they're all having access to similar or the same data sets. It's the same thing. And that's the part that makes me laugh. It's like we can find you people super quickly. Like, and then they start saying that of outside traditional agencies, like, but you're now competing against 15 of the same other tools doing the same thing. And prime example, one of my clients actually showed me the tool a couple of days ago. They've hired nobody through it because none of the people are screened. It's just constantly just in your Slack, and it just becomes noise. So I just ignore it now. And that's where the tools don't become effective. I'm yet to find one that I sit and go, I love this. I will use it all the time. So if anyone has that, also I'm very open to it.
Really, there's that's quite interesting to hear. Is that just because you feel that there's a lot of replication between what you're
I think Juicebox is probably the closest where I was
right?
interested enough to use it. I liked some of their searching capabilities. But the time it took me to upskill myself onto that, find them similar sort of profiles or the same profile on LinkedIn, right? And yes, Juicebox eventually would become quicker for me as it learned me and I learned the system more. But there wasn't a huge difference where I sat back and thought, holy shit, that's a tool we need. Like, we are so far behind without doing it. Maybe another recruiter will have a different opinion on it. But again, the fatigue of it is like I trialed that and multiple, and I was sitting there thinking they all are the same.
Yeah, look, I get that. Obviously, Talent Forecast is a platform. Most of it is focused around workforce intelligence, but there is an applicant tracking suite which has got a sourcing tool, and the idea around that is to look for talent outside of LinkedIn. And the thinking was actually predominantly because LinkedIn, as you probably know, Eden, has got a stranglehold over the market and over B2B data. And it's constantly going up and up in price with offering less and less value.
Yeah.
Our sourcing tool looks for talent across, Apollo, GitHub, Stack Overflow, Hugging Face, Kaggle, Beyonce, Product Hunt, Reddit, basically pockets of talent online outside of LinkedIn. And the reason for that is because of that. LinkedIn is so expensive. In my last company, when I was reviewing budgets, it was eye-watering what we were paying as a relatively small business, 100 employees. It was eye watering. And I think, look, what you've said there about replication of functionality, I think inherently that is a challenge when we're obviously engaging the market. I think Talent Forecast is a workforce intelligence solution unrivaled in what we do, because you could Google predictive hiring and you'll find 200 blogs and articles talking about the topic, but very, very few providers that have a genuine solution to workforce intelligence and predictive hiring capability.
If you've got time, I'd like to ideally show it. So this is the part now. If someone's on Spotify, you've got to now get onto YouTube, or Apple onto YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can stick around, because this is the part where I feel like we take it away from theoretical, let's talk about predictive hiring and actually see what it looks like. Because you are right, there's very few people that actually are building something like this. And we've gone through the process, I guess, of why it's important in general. We've got displacement of jobs, we've got the skills, but I think until someone sees it, it makes it a little bit difficult and tangible to understand what it is it looks like. So I'm going to let you share your screen. I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, great. So, so yeah, look, really good point. And I think it's worth seeing, because nobody really kind of visually sees predictive hiring. What does it mean? What does it look like? So if you're using Talent Forecast, here you've got the dashboard. So immediately you can see who your high risk employees are, what the potential impact cost is to the business, and what critical roles are at risk. So immediately you can see like the cost impacts, where your future job attrition is, what potential employees are going to be impacted in what departments. In active workforce, we can if we just click on an employee, for example, this particular person has 95% chance of leaving within 12 months. So that is pretty much guaranteed. Obviously, you can never be 100%. However, 95 is a strong indication, and we break down the risk factors. We give the business insight into why this employee is at risk of future attrition. Obviously, AI recommends what you can do to mitigate that risk, and then obviously there's features here that give you kind of real compensation with the market. Now, while I'm not going to go through the whole platform with you today, because it is vast, I can show you some of the functionality around modeling for AI resource optimization. So here we can employ different types of scenarios, baseline, conservative, aggressive. And this is all this data is based on the current business users' own employment data. Yeah. Right. So this calculates from their own internal data sets, and it gives them indications of what departments are going to be at risk of AI skill reskilling, over what timeline, the departments and the employees as well. So if we look at Kiara here, so we look at Kara here, we've got reskill. So this is somebody who works in customer support for this business. It breaks down the contributing factors of why this employee is at risk, and then here we can see what skills are being automated in their role. I approach this problem, Eden, with a very human-centric way. Yeah. So here we can see how we can make this employee more valuable. We can future-proof their skills, and obviously any recommendations, certificates, external additional training. That's because I fundamentally believe if you know something is going to happen far in advance, you can do something positively and proactively about it. There are obviously, it depends on the stakeholder and the lens they're looking through this data. Obviously, if you've got someone in financial planning and analysis, you know,
They're going to see
they
the
could,
number it's going to cost us, and
yeah, they see they'll see the salary risk exposure, they'll see the finances. And yeah, they'll
if
be
you don't
looking
mind
at.
me jumping in a second, so of course there's an element of salary and tenure, and then there's a salary basically. Let's take the top person. I haven't got the glasses on. I can see the salary at 30,000, for example. Did it compare that salary to the market to say if that person's below or above the market rate, or is it across the
Yes.
company as you're comparing it to?
So it will be externally matched data metrics in terms of the salary. So,
Yeah.
for example, this particular person is a marketing associate. They're paid 34.94 with this company. That's telling them that the market typically pays around the 50 to 55th percentile, which means that they're actually underpaying this employee by 15,000.
Mm.
So, and again, we go into the data a lot more granularly as well. So if this was an engineer, engineers don't get paid at 50 to 55 percentile. They get paid at 75, 80, 90 plus. So it again gives an indication of what that skills are worth in the wider market. And again, it's giving the business that data so they can do something about it, right?
Well, the reason I bring that up is the amount of times I get asked, what the market rates. So, like, as an external recruiter, I see a small slice of that market. Companies that give me jobs and candidates that I speak to about salaries, that's all I'm seeing. But something like this, I know obviously this isn't the focus of the platform, but even having something built in like that is so valuable to companies. Yes, predictive hiring, salary information, the AI options of how to upskill that person. You can now see how your predictive hiring models are essentially allowing you to plan better for an organization. Because again, coming back to the introduction, we said like people use spreadsheets, and I mean we used to literally do it where we'd sat down with the CFO and he was like, okay, cool, who are you hiring this year? I'm like, I don't fucking know. What do you mean who am I hiring this year? I'm like,
Yeah,
you didn't tell me this was what the meeting was about. And then you'd
yeah,
start putting numbers in, like, no, we'll move that person to there and that person to there. And how much do you think they're going to bill? I was like, I don't know who we're hiring. I don't know how much they're going to bill. Like, that is wild. I mean, that was 5+ years ago. Don't get me wrong, but I imagine a lot of the teams that I work with in the early stage companies don't have something like this. So, do you think your model for Talent Forecast as a platform? Do you think it's beneficial to everybody, or who would you say is like the sweet spot of customers that would really gain the most benefit out of this?
So yeah, look, it's a good question. I think look, if you've got a business where you've got less than 100 employees and you've got 10% attrition or less, this isn't going to be for you. Yeah, this is for larger businesses. This is for businesses experiencing turnover. This is for businesses that want to be more productive, that you want to use workforce intelligence to model future hiring demands and plan what vacancies they need, what they look like, what the costs are, just giving them a higher data visibility into their workforce. And those sorts of businesses, if you've got 2, 3, 4, 500, 1,000, 2,000 employees plus, and you can see huge impacts drivers in terms of cost, in terms of staff retention. There's a lot of benefits to businesses that have a bigger size. If you're a 500 employee business with a 25% staff turnover, this is transformative. Be able to. We believe if you're using the data in the right way, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to see use retain your talent within your business, up to 50% improvement than prior to using workforce intelligence. So there's huge gains to be made. And I mean, just on the screen in front of me now, we've got like hiring forecasts. So this obviously tells the business, when they need to hire for what types of roles, when they need to start hiring by, when they need to fill by. Obviously, it uses a lot of data metrics in terms of their own time to hire. Obviously, break down the costs for these types of hires as well. And it's just about giving data visibility to the business, yeah? Because when a business hires against a role, they see the cost as, right, we need to pay an agency, £15,000, yeah? Or $20,000 or what have you.
Mm.
What they don't understand is all of the associated costs that goes into that replacement and making that hire. So obviously our data models give them that visibility, and it breaks them down. And obviously it's different costs for different types of roles, depending on the resources that's required to hire against that.
I love the fact you put in, by the way, recruiter time, hiring manager time, interviewing time. We built a very crude data, like it's not a model by any means, but it's like a cost calculator which focuses on that, because that's the part where most people forget. It's like your job's been open for months before you decide to use an agency or not, but how much time was really wasted? I know, we have one recruiter, it's like if they've done 30 interviews, 30 hours gone, what that actually cost the business is changing that conversation away from it's 15k to what's it already cost you and what's it going to continue costing you. And then, so I love the fact that you've actually embedded that in. That's class. From my side, like not everyone's going to jump on board and go, talent forecast is the best thing ever. Like I want to go and buy it. I would love some people to come and find you on LinkedIn and test it out for sure. But let's just take it back a second and say, what's the first step or two somebody in the TA space, leader, manager, whoever, if they're more interested in getting deeper into predictive hiring on kind of a more granular level like this, what's the first step or two they can actually take themselves to kind of start that journey?
Yeah, the first step is look, the first step is to understand your problem, right? What are you trying to solve? There's no good in coming to us or any vendor and trying to look for a band-aid or a quick patch fix. You need to understand what you're looking to gain from having this capability, what you're looking to get out of it. So if you've got high staff turnover, if you've got high variations between contracts and temporary labor, and you're always hiring behind, if you've got long time to hire or increasing cost per hire, whatever the metrics are, you have to have a problem that needs to be solved. And then when you've got clarity on what those problems are, then we can obviously focus and look at how we can go about helping to overcome those problems, to drive transformation within the business. But look, I mean, we never sell the technology on a first interaction with a business. It's about understanding them. It's about understanding what they need, and then from that we can obviously work with them to develop solutions which are going to be fit for what they need. But it is worth me saying, Eden, I mean, this whole business came about is because working in talent acquisition, I was fed up of hearing about a resignation when it had happened like 3 or 4 weeks before, and the person was just about to leave the business, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now you've got to get sign off with finance. You get sign off with finance, then you can begin the hiring campaign. The person you're replacing has already left. They're putting extra demands and stress on the people who are left within that team. And then you're almost hiring under pressure. Yeah. Even whether the recruiter feels like that or whether the hiring stakeholders feel like, oh, we just need someone. We need someone. And that's why I thought actually there's another way. If you could see these problems, if you could see these departures and this attrition happening before it arrived, you could actually do something about it in advance. And I couldn't think of a better way to make talent acquisition more strategic than using workforce intelligence to drive decision making at the top of the business.
No, I think it's genuinely. This is the first time I've actually seen the product. It looks brilliant, and I can see the value added there. Again, if you're not watching and you're on Spotify, Apple, please go and check the YouTube links out because you can actually see it in its action. But I think that the biggest takeaway is one, it's going to help the business tremendously, but it's also going to help the talent teams take away that stress and burden. And how many times we had people, colleagues, friends of ours that have gone off, from burnout or have left the industry altogether. Because you're right, everything needed to be done yesterday. It's always been like that in recruitment. I feel it all the time, don't get me wrong. It's like whenever a job vacancy comes in, it's like, when do you need to hire? ASAP. It's like, well, you could have told me fucking 4 weeks. You could have told me 4 weeks ago. At least we could have done something from that period of time. It's so I love the fact of something like this. Jamie, I really appreciate you sitting down, showing this, talk about predictive hiring, because like I said, it's the first time in 10 seasons that someone is really focusing in on that, which shows how specific it is. But if somebody does want to pick your brains a little bit further, learn a bit more about talent forecast, where's the best place that they can come and find you?
Yeah, so the website's talentforecast.ai, or by all means send either my team or myself an email, jamie@talentforecast.ai, and yeah, look, be more than happy to answer any questions in relation to the technology and see where we can go from there.
Sounds good. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Eden.
Bye-bye.